everybody, welcome to the 2020 Make It Big conference. I'm your host, Beatrice Este with Big Commerce, and today I'm here with Buck Sleeper, Director of the Retail and Restaurant Vertical over at EPAM Continuum. Thank you so much, Buck, for being here with us today. I'd love to have you kick things off by introducing yourself and telling us how you got started in e-commerce.
Buck Sleeper. I'm the Director of the Retail and Restaurant Vertical at EPAM Continuum. My background's in architectural design, so I came into this world from a completely different direction. I've always been drawn to space design and spatial experiences. I spent about a decade making big buildings before making a shift to service and experience work that I do now. I love architecture and urban design, but I think that one of the things that I always struggled with was the answer tends to always be a building, and I wanted to be able to step back and challenge the brief in a different kind of way. And so that drew me to the kind of innovation work that we do now at EPAM, where we're constantly stepping back and asking what is the right question and getting beyond maybe some of the things that we go into a project with some preconceptions of. So always stepping back and trying to figure out what is the right question to be asking.
Customer behavior has changed so much in the past few years, let alone the past few months. What should retailers and brands today be doing in their approach for customer and user experience?
We talk a lot about customers and we design for users and customers, but we always try to step back and actually look at employees first. So I believe that great customer experiences are given by great employee experiences. And if you work at a high self-esteem job and you feel great about what you do, that love and that passion gets pushed out into the customer experience as well. So I think we try to actually say focus a little bit less on your end user and focus on those people who are actually going to be enabling that experience. And then when it comes to the pandemic, things have changed a lot. I think that one of the things that we focus on, of course, is safety and really the perception of safety. So we have borrowed this term that some folks are using called sanitation theater, and that's really understanding that the perception of the work you're doing is actually what is important. It's in some ways it's more important than the work you're doing, because if people don't feel safe, if your employees don't feel like this is a place that they can come to work and be protected, then the actual work you're doing doesn't matter. And the flip side of that, of course, is it can't just be theater. You have to be putting real protocols and steps in place to keep people safe and feel like they can come to work in a productive way.
Something that's been really interesting this year has been what's going on in the food and restaurant space. Obviously, we've seen things like groceries soaring in growth, whereas restaurants have had new challenges to face this year. So let's talk about restaurant and digital, and how does e-commerce play into that?
Yeah, so one of the fun parts about my job is that I get to constantly switch between retail experiences and restaurant experience and really understand what are the similarities and the differences between them. I think e-commerce and digital, the way that it's coming to life in restaurants right now is it's actually trying to shorten the distance between your wallet and your stomach and getting people to good food more quickly. So there's lots of great examples of that. Honeygrow, McDonald's, and others have kiosks, which really extend the mobile ordering experience, so you quickly get to your order without having to interact with somebody. And of course, we're seeing a lot of automation. Spice in Boston has a series of robotic walks that actually cook your food for you right in front of you. I think the challenge in that is that while yes, it is increasing efficiencies and it certainly has some wow factors, the risk is that you're reducing the humanity. Food in particular is such a human thing. It's so visceral. It's cultural. It's historical. We love feeding people and the satisfaction of actually seeing someone, if you're in the kitchen, seeing a dining room full of people who are enjoying your food, like that's a really important thing. So as we implement technology, we're always trying to make sure that it's removing those things that people aren't great at, the dispatch or the repetitive tasks, but it's not removing the person-to-person interactions that we really crave in a restaurant experience.
I think to your point there, food is such a social and emotional experience, and one that can be hard to portray in a digital setting. How does retail differ from restaurant e-commerce in that aspect?
In some ways, it's very much the same. I think when you look at acquisition in both spaces, it's about creating really great experiences that level up to an outcome that people are trying to achieve. That could be an outcome of belonging. So retail, whether it's fashion or having that next new phone, making sure that people perceive you as the early adopter. It could be around solving a problem, getting a mattress, getting a hammer, whatever that needs to be. But it's really about creating an experience that gives you confidence to say, hey, this is a business that can help me do the thing that I want to do. And a big part of that acquisition is actually the space, the service, the people. And I think where restaurants really excel is that they kind of have a cheat code, which is if you're hungry and you serve good food, it's a bit of a shortcut. And where retail can struggle is that a lot of those sensory elements around food are not available to you. And I think it's why you're seeing a lot more food and beverage and hospitality in retail experiences to try to connect that. So that's acquisition. I think from a distribution point of view, the big difference between the two is that restaurants, of course, have perishable goods. It's harder to move things around. You've got fresh meats or fresh produce, and those quickly spoil. But in many ways, retail also has fresh goods. If you look at seasonable fashion and the way in which traditionally inventory is moved through a space is not unlike a head of lettuce. But I think we're starting to see that change and more durable goods and things that are easier to move around in a system.
So prior to the pandemic, we were seeing a lot of brands merge their online and offline channels. Obviously, this year has presented some unforeseen challenges for specifically the physical retail space. How are brands moving forward in terms of merging these two channels?
This is something we talk about a lot. So coming from a background in space and architecture, I understand brick and mortar experiences really well, and then of course working as part of a broad digital consultancy, online is really important too. I think that a lot of the digital physical merge we're seeing in stores is maybe unnecessary. We're seeing a proliferation of screens and beacon tracking, and certainly Wi-Fi and data are available everywhere. But I think it's really important before investing in that kind of merge to step back and say, like, why are we doing this? And kind of as a quick primer there, I think that when we think about online experiences, they're great for transactions, for re-upping if you're already subscribing to a food item or diapers or what have you, and it's good for the really quick transactional things. But the in-store experiences, that comes back to the kind of the visceral multi-sensory thing, and you really need to be using the entire space to bring that experience to life. So do they merge? Sometimes. I think that Warby Parker has done a really interesting job of making sure that the digital information related to your account or your previous interactions with them is right on hand with associates and tablets. And I think that the more that you can pull, again, kind of coming back to the food example in restaurants, the more you can pull out those interactions around finding something or managing inventory that people don't want to do and that computers are really good at, the better when it comes to actually merging them.
To that point, the same go-to-market strategy isn't going to work the same for every brand or every experience. So what serves well online and what's better saved for offline?
So we have a pretty robust brand offering, and we often talk about the role of brand. And I think that people, when looking at brand, and especially when looking across these two spaces, think that consistency is always required, and that what you're doing online, you also have to be doing in person. And brand and the consistency is a choice. That's a decision you're making. It's completely fine to have one experience online and another experience in store. I think what is really important is that the way you represent certain aspects of it stay the same. So, for example, if you're a computer device manufacturer and you call one section of your store peripherals online and you call it accessories in a physical retail space, that causes confusion and not in a great way. And then I think the other really important thing is to the Warby Parker example, if you've given information such as your prescription or your home address to that brand or the company at one point, it should be readily accessible elsewhere. You shouldn't have to give that again. So I think that, so as I mentioned, online is great for repeat tasks. Online also has to happen alongside everything else you're doing, whether it's Instagram or TikTok or Google Classroom or all of these things that take our mind share, and they have to be really quick because they operate within that context. Whereas once you're in a store, you really do have someone's undivided attention. So don't divide it by also asking them to pull out their phone or interact with some other part of your business or your channel. In-store is great for being people and interacting with other people and really having a whole experience in that moment.
And I think you just touched on it there for a second, but how do you extend the user experience over to an in-person customer experience?
You lean into the parts of your experience that you can't show online. I think mattress companies are a great example of this. Certainly, many of them were trying to expand into the physical space before the pandemic put a pause on a lot of things. But I think that wherever it's relevant, if you can find a way to test an experience in kind of a physical or even a bodily way, you should do it. So I think a great example of something that maybe works for me and doesn't is there's been a proliferation of AR, VR, put your furniture in your space and see if it fits. And that's fine. And that helps you make decisions around dimensions and color and if it looks great with your side table. But I'm, as an architect, I'm a bit of a chair nerd, and one of the reasons that I loved stores like Design Within Reach initially was that for the first time you could actually go into a store and sit down on a piece of furniture that you maybe have only ever seen pictures of, or even other stores that sell the same thing would never let you sit in a chair you can't afford. So I think really leaning into the parts of your experience that you couldn't possibly put on a website is going to really drive that engagement, and as you were saying, the kind of the pull through from your online work.
So we've talked a lot about what customers are expecting and really what goes into making a great customer experience. But I want to shift gears here and talk about what brands need to do to make sure that they are delivering on that. So talk to me a little bit about going through the process of testing your brand to make sure that you are creating that optimal experience.
There are two types of brands. There are those brands that listen to their customers in a very real way. And then there are those brands who are projecting kind of the hero designer or the hero visionary. And I think both of those are great approaches to creating a product. Our view of the world is helping companies have a better understanding of their employees, of their customers, of everyone who touches their brand. And so for us, a really deep understanding of qualitative ethnography is the base of our process. And so for us, what that looks like is we get out into the field early and often. Pre-pandemic, we were in people's living rooms, in their garages. We would follow them to work. We'd fly with them on planes, and really understand why they're doing what they're doing. And then I think you need to balance that with a quantitative approach. So a deep understanding of large data sets that tell you what people are doing, and when you combine that quant and qual, you get really great insights. So I think my advice to any brand is to understand what kind of brand you are, what kind of interaction you want to have with your customers, and do the hard work of getting out in front of people and deeply understanding them, both at the level of a population and also at the level of an individual.
For sure. And ultimately for both restaurants and retail, it's about getting that repeat business and creating an experience that customers want to return to. I know you guys do a lot with brand and loyalty, so talk to me a little bit about your strategies there.
Now more than ever, especially as we have fewer channels to interact with people on it, at least for the moment, we hope, loyalty to brands has never been more important. So we're often asked the question, like, what should our brand loyalty program look like? And I think that when that question is asked, people are already imagining like an app with stars or points or shovels or whatever it is for your company. And we always recommend stepping back. So when looking at brand loyalty programs, we break it down into brand, into loyalty, and then into the program itself. So the brand, that's kind of maybe the more tactical or strategic part here, where we're talking about mission and values and principles for experience design, how they come to life through visual identity, and then the actual experiences you're trying to promote. That could be the way you're training your staff, the events you hold, the space itself. And those two combined create, or at least influence the perception of your brand. So first of all, it's always starting with the kind of core brand principles and making sure that foundation is really solid. When it comes to loyalty, that's where you step back and you ask, why are people actually returning here? Is it is it a transactional loyalty? Do we make it really easy for you to, say, get a cup of coffee every day in the exact same way that you want? Is it an emotional loyalty? Are we helping you to craft an experience that you can share with friends or family and put yourself in an emotional state that you're trying to do? Or is it an identity loyalty? Does buying this product become so important to you that it's actually part of who you are? And is there a fashion brand that you wear because that's your jam? And if that's the case, then you really need to understand that that's why someone is loyal in that way. And where that's important is the final point around program. The program is the actual tactical part around points and apps and rewards and levels and tiers and all of those things. But if you don't understand exactly what your brand is and you don't understand why people are loyal to it, you can go off the rails pretty quickly. So as an example, if you're a fashion brand and the reason that people are coming to you is because it says something about who they are as a person, giving them stars or points or even a discount may not be what they're looking for. What you might actually be doing instead is access to the designer, an opportunity to supersize their voice as part of the brand and participate in a campaign, ways in which level up to that identity that they're trying to produce, not just getting more of their product.
And last but not least, for those tuning into this session, what are a few key takeaways you'd like them to walk away with?
The first takeaway is to start with employees. There's a lot of talk about customer experience and CX, but really it starts with the people who are showing up every day and creating your service. So the first one is employee experience. The second takeaway that I would say is that InStore when looking at digital physical merge, InStore is for discovery and for escape, and then online is really for transaction and for a quick re-up. And then finally, whenever we think about digital tools should help enable humans spend more time with each other, not less. So when thinking of automating a process or creating a new part of your experience using a tool, e-commerce or otherwise, make sure that what you're actually doing is allowing more time for people to interact together as people.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much, Buck, for joining us, for sharing your expertise, and for being part of the 2020 Make It Big conference.
Thanks for having me.
That was such a great session with Buck Sleeper, Director of the Retail and Restaurant Vertical at EPAM Continuum. Be sure to engage with us on social media using the hashtag MakeItBigConf and share what you've learned. If you're looking for more insights, be sure to tune into more Make It Big conference sessions by heading over to www.bigcommerce.com/makeitbig.